Hello, and thanks for coming back to our STEP workshop this week. We are on step 3. Pardon me. We titled it Selfishness, and will you work the rest of the steps? We'll unpack that statement in just a bit. A few announcements before we get started. If you haven't already subscribed to our daily hammock readings, please check them out. They're on our Facebook. You could go to the website of avenuesrecovery.com and get on the email list where we could send them to you every morning, or you can find them on YouTube on Avenues Recovery's YouTube channel. What they are is 1 to 3 minute videos that could start your day with an intention or reset a day through the form of a prayer, a thought, something that could stir your intellect, your heart, and some of them are either even meditation leads. For 2 to 3 minutes, just to step back and reset. So check them out. Tonight, we have a great guest from Meta Reading, and we'll get to him shortly. And he has a great last name. We were just talking about that. I'll tell you a little bit about that. But we're on step 3. That means we've worked and have an understanding of steps 1 and 2. So let's do a quick review. Step 1. Traditionally, in Alcoholics Anonymous is admitting that you have alcoholism. In a general overlay, say in the language of 2022, you're admitting that you have substance use disorder, a disorder that is progressive and fatal, and continues to torment you after you have achieved some sense of sobriety in itself. So we're dancing back and forth in this idea of step 1 and 2 that drinking is not just the problem. I'm taking step 2 from the position I may be insane. And insanity is not a diagnosis. It's a term, a legal term saying, I don't know true from false, especially when it comes to the obsessions and the romance of maybe my drug or choice. But really specifically, this idea that AA tried to hone in on in the 30s is mental blank spots. This inability to measure risk, reward when it comes to relapse, the insanity of the sober mind. And they dedicate their first 4 to 5 chapters to really focus and understand, do we know what we're committing to? Do I believe I have a plan that works? If not, why am I here? Why did I end up in treatment? Are we going to surrender, get into this position of surrendering, which Mickey will talk about tonight? So steps 1 and 2 are prepping us for that. It's measuring our level of desperation. It's measuring our ability to realize we don't have a plan that has worked successfully to this point, and that the insanity we need to really challenge and will is that of the sober mind. Can I go further from this? Now we're going to go into step 3. And step 2, before we do that, there's a prayer that most people read at AA meetings, is that we ask for his protection and care with complete abandon. That's the end of step 2. That's the prep to get to step 3. That's kind of the mantra we want. Are we still willing to go to any lengths to achieve sobriety? And you could see this kind of position in Narcotics Anonymous. This position's already expected from you in Dharma and Refuge at this point of torment, measuring your ability, your desire for pleasure to increase and escape pain, and this has left you in a life of torment. So step 3, now you'll see us depart from talking about active use. And in 12-step life, we want to focus addiction into 4 concepts, ideas, these words that describe a personality that rose out of addiction. And it's going to be selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Step 3 challenges and introduces us to selfishness. Let us see, what will are we truly surrendering? How much of your will is left if you're using drugs and alcohol a day after you decided to quit? Like, where is the will operational then? Is this a real illness? And it shouldn't be that hard to start to consider that, and to consider the self, even manifested in many ways. If we're charitable or if we're enraged, why are we always trying to get our way? Why am I trying to fix the world around me? Is not the problem here the perception and considerations of how I'm relating to the world? I'm in a world of pain, and it's hard to relate and get plugged back into life. community. Step 3 is going to consider that. All the way from Metairie is our friend, Mickey Randazzo. And I know Randazzo here, so we were, going over the name history of Randazzo. So Mickey works 4 Avenues the last 2 years. Mickey is pretty articulate in step 3 and how he experienced it. We'll get to know a little bit about him and how he effectively experienced step 3. Mickey, it's all you.
It's all me. All right. Thank you. Appreciate the introduction. So I guess I'll always start with my name is Mickey. I'm an alcoholic. That's an easy one to say. I do work the 12-step program. My sobriety date is November 19 of 2018. And actually, it's funny. He asked too if I'd worked the steps before, and that was in November of 2018. It was the first time I actually started working the steps. A little backstory with it. I mean, like I said, grew up Louisiana, stayed here. I don't know. Like I said, things whether I became alcoholic or was born one. I'm not sure on that. I don't really even. I got hung up on that question for a very long time, and finally got to the point to where it's all right, it didn't matter. I just had to do something about it. But I remember the first time I did drink with it. I was very young, and like I said, it was my dad. He gave me a sip of beer. It was very innocent. I was just I asked to try it. He said, yeah. And I tried. I remember thinking it was disgusting and that I would never drink this stuff. And I wonder why adults do it. And I asked him that. And he said, it's just something friends do when they get together, have a good time. And the thing is I really remembered that stuck with me because I got to high school. And I remember it was Malibu rum. It was the first thing that my friends came around. And it smelled like sunscreen to me. I don't like coconuts. There's nothing good about it. But I already remember that I was obsessed with the effect that alcohol was going to give me before I even experienced the effect, because it's something that friends did when they got together. So I was already willing to do something that I didn't want to do to get a certain effect to it. And it compounded a lot from there over the years. If, like I said, I was a good little alcoholic. If one's good, two's better. If two's good, 2 plus that's going to be better than that. It's more, faster, better. However, I can do it any which way. And what developed over the years was kind of relating it to step 3, the first 3 steps in ways. Everything changed for me. Everything changed. Growing up as a kid, I loved sports. I was a mama's boy. I was a good kid, got good grades, all this stuff. And I remember, if you want to even call it a spiritual experience, that's what it was like when I was first introduced to substances, right? Because I took it and everything changed for me. My entire viewpoint of life changed. It was like, this is what I want to do. And what do I have to do to continue to do this in my life? What do I need to do to keep it around? What friends do I have to make sure it's around? What friends are okay with it? Everything changed into, how do I keep doing this for as long as I can? And so, like I said, in a way, that even is just a spiritual experience of my book, right? I had something happen to me that created a great enough effect that my entire perspective of life changed. And that's what it was. So going through the years with it, the things that I had to do to continue using would get worse. I've always been a great problem solver. A little problem would come up, fix it, move on. Same little problem will come up, fix it again, move on, fix it again and move on. Problems would just keep getting bigger. So it would just take more time and more attention to it. That's all it was. It wasn't even a big deal. It just caused a little more, time and attention. And I continue to do that. Problems would just, I remember I used family, friends, jobs, anything I could to fix the problems that came through, substance abuse. And I remember I was one time, I think the first treatment I went to, I went out of it as a bargaining chip to try to get some help from family to, help me fix the problem. Because the only way they would give me more money is if I went to a treatment center. And I did, and it was miserable. I didn't like it. And that's when the first time I was introduced to the steps were, my opinion of them was I didn't need it. I thought that, actually, I'll be honest, I thought the steps were like absolute trash, right? There's no step on how to get the girlfriend back. There's no step on how to get your mom to give you more money. There's no step on how to get a better job without doing any work. So like the book, the steps, didn't need them because those were the things that I wanted, right? Um, I was asked to leave the treatment because I did not want to stay sober, and I was up in Baton Rouge, town about an hour away, and I begged him if I came home, got by my family, I'd be okay. And I came home, and they told me, like, okay, well, look, you got to attend 12-step meetings a few times a week, and you need to get a sponsor to be able to continue treatment. I said, no problem. So they gave me the sheets. I'd sign my own sheet. Sometimes I make up meeting names and stuff like that. I made up my own sponsor. I gave him a name. His name is Gary. I put a contact in my phone saying Gary's sponsor, and I would call it every day so I could show the counselor, like, look, I'm calling my sponsor. You can get off my back now. So, like, those are the actions I was taking to, like, stay, like, to continue using. I put a lot of work into being able to stay loaded because that's what I wanted. That's all I wanted. And I don't understand why everybody else is just getting on my case and getting in my way of letting me do what I want to do. I remember, and so like I said, obviously, I wasn't able to stay sober with Gary. So it kept moving on. And like I said, the problems that would used to be able to solve would keep getting bigger. They keep getting bigger, and they keep getting worse, and they keep coming back. But they would come back because, my mom didn't give me enough money this time. They'd come back because, I have a job that's, making me work more hours than I want. They're coming back because of all these reasons all around. And all these reasons in my head, they're creating my problems and they're not solving my problems. Right? The drugs and alcohol at most of the time never even crossed my mind. I remember it's crazy now because I've watched it when I was, in the mist before I got sober, and then I watched it again after I got sober. This movie, Get Him to the Greek, like a comedy, and he's talking about it. He's asking the guy, he's like, well, why do you use drugs? Because you're so successful, you got all these things, like, why do you do it? And he looks at him, he says, man, I feel bad for you. You got to worry about your job, you have to worry about your family, you got to worry about your wife. All I have to worry about is getting this. And I remember thinking, like, yes, finally somebody gets it. Like, that's what I was like, that's what I thought. Like, that makes so much sense to me. Now I'm actually like almost disgusted that that's how I used to think, because it's the complete opposite. But that's what the experiences of it. That is 100% real. That is how I felt. It made perfect sense. I had to worry about one thing only, while everybody else is going about their days worrying about job, work, school, family, all these things. I thought I was winning life, really, and through those times, like I said, I remember trying another, more problems came up. And I think the time I came to treatment, I came to Avenues Recovery. And actually, I think the first time I made a trip here was in January of 2018. And I detoxed and I left because I had it, right? Avenues was so great. I'm cured. I left, and I remember, like, the nurse, she told me, she says, Mickey, you're gonna die in 2 weeks. And I remember, like, 15 days later, like, thinking, like, proved her wrong, like, because I won, right? I'm successfully getting loaded at 15 days when she said I'd be dead in 14. I won. That's my mindset, right? And of course, there was, I didn't even, at the time, I didn't even realize how unhappy I was. I always say they have, like, little windows. Some people, like, if you call them the God moments or whatever it is, like moments of clarity, but it would be like a little window opened up real quick. And I remember, like, that's when I could finally get honest. It would open up, and I'd call my mom, and I'm crying on the phone about how, like, terrible this is. I need to get this fixed. This is bad. I need some help. And she says, I'm gonna call you right back, Mickey. Hang tight. I'm gonna call you right back, and we're gonna get some help. She calls me back 3 minutes later. I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes. I think we're overreacted a little bit. I'm good. Just need, a couple grand and I'm all right. Like, windows close quick on me. And I I remember though, I met this one guy around that time in January, and I don't know if the window was open or for the first time ever, I was able to find somebody that he got loaded like I got loaded. He talked to people the same way I talk to people. He used people the way I use people. He did all these things. So for the first time ever, I found somebody that's like me. And when he's like me, the thing I knew about him was that he couldn't stay sober. So even at that time, I remember thinking like, it was never like, oh man, here's this guy that's sober. That's a lot like me. Maybe I could stay sober. It was, he's like me. He's not going to stay sober, because I had that little faith in myself at the time. And, you know, that was like early in that year. I got to treatment in January. It was November. And luckily they would take us to outside meetings. And at the second meeting that we went to, I remember seeing that guy in the chair. He was 4 chairs in front of me and 1 over to the right. And I tell you, the way he sat in the chair, I knew he'd been sober that whole time.
Wow.
How, I don't know how to describe it, but it's that light feeling that you see with somebody that has sobriety, that you just know that like they're not carrying the weight of the world with them everywhere. And so I asked that man to sponsor me. And what he started doing, he started showing up and reading that book. And then, like I said, that same book that didn't have the chapter on how to get the girl back started, you know, reading a little better this time.
They're going to put it in the new one, to get the girl back.
That's what they should. I keep, you know, I don't know how they don't yet. That's obvious. Man, everybody gets sober if they put that in there. But you know, like I said, and so he would show up and he'd read. And I think the coolest thing about him reading, you know, I like me without drugs and alcohol in my life, or without a higher power. So just me alone. Mm-hmm. I'm scared. I'm a coward. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a scorekeeper. You know, that's how I am. If you take away my higher power, or you take away my drugs and alcohol. So when I was in treatment, that's what was left of me. Oh, extremely gullible too. That's still there. But so I come to treatment, and you know, this guy, he's telling me like, okay, well, you got to call me every day. Oh, I call him every day because I'm too scared to not to call him. Yeah. You know, he says, read this chapter. I read that chapter because like I couldn't say no. I would have left treatment if I knew I could at those first couple of days, but like I didn't know you could, and I was too scared to ask. And then by the time I found out, like I thought AMA was something like LOL. Yeah. Just didn't know what it was. And then by the time I found out what it was, I wasn't going to ask, because I knew I'd have to like go talk to somebody and they'd try to talk me out of it. And I would walk back to my apartment with my tail between my legs, because I can't disappoint people. So I didn't even bother with that whole thing. And, but what's crazy, like, I think that's what saved my life. Yeah. The things that I hated the most about myself is probably exactly what saved my life. Right. Because I was doing all these things to try to either be somebody that I wasn't, or to try to not care about what you thought. Either way, like the drugs and alcohol worked in that area. And so like I said, this guy, he would ask me to read this stuff, and I'd read the chapter, and I'm thinking like, okay, he's going to ask me a question. I'm going to know the answer, like a good little, you know, patient in treatment. I'm going to have all the answers, and I would read it. And it was like I read the wrong chapter. And then it happened again, and it happened again, and it happened again with we agnostics. And then I finally kind of just gave up trying to figure these things out. And that's when like the first shift happened. By no means did I want to be sober at that point either. Let me just be honest with that. Sure. This guy was showing up, and he was just telling me, if you do certain things, life's going to get better. I'm hoping if I can do these things he's asking, I can make my life better while I still drink and drug in my head. And I mean, I told him that, and that was my hope. Right. But I was willing to do the stuff that he said. And through that, like little things started changing, you know, it started changing little things started changing rapidly. I don't think I noticed them until later though, to be honest with it. But it made it good enough to try one more day. Right. To finally listen to somebody else it was so relieving. Right. Like, I mean, it was so much work to make up a sponsor and press call and have to go through a call log to show somebody just to keep a lie going. Yeah. It was just so much work. And I think finally, like he told me this early on, the easiest way to make a decision is to give it to somebody else. like somebody that has your best interest out in heart, right? That cares about you, that loves you, that wants the best for you. The easiest way to make a decision when you don't know how to is give that decision to that person and then do what they say. And that's what I did with him. Like I said, my third step going through it when I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. At that moment, God was good, orderly direction.
Yeah.
I got hung up on God. I
Yeah.
got hung up on that fact early. I found anything to get hung up on. Was I an addict or was I an alcoholic? Was should I be here? Should I be there? Was I born with it or did I become one? Like
Yeah.
I used any excuse I could to just not do the steps.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna use God as an excuse to not work the steps, right?
It's Gary's fault.
Yeah, Gary. God, I would have been sober with somebody else. But like, so we used good orderly direction because the best he could do was tell me, he's like, look, you lied, you cheated, you stole, you did all these things when you're in addiction. Is that good orderly direction? Like, no. He's like, okay. So God is just good orderly direction is just the opposite of those things. Start doing those things. And then, like I said, what did he say? I don't remember how he put it, but it was something about like inviting God doesn't bring like the good orderly direction, but living in good orderly direction brings God. It was something like that where it's like, and that's how like we kind of worked from there, right? Like I was willing to just, live according to good orderly direction, try to do the right thing, be honest with people, do all these things. And because like that's the whole point of the steps is to have the spiritual awakening, right? That means I finally come to terms with the a power greater than myself that I can do business with. That's God then, right? It didn't come to me at 3, right? And but it came to me by the end of the steps, and that's the whole point of them, is to find that higher power that that can keep me stay between me and the drugs and alcohol. But it was pretty incredible, and I found it to be a pretty amazing experience. From very early on, he hammered home with me, the selfishness, self-centeredness aspect of the disease. Because I know in the past, I've always just tried to keep it towards like, okay, well, yeah, I never, some people say, well, I never stole money from my mom, whatever, for this. It's like, but, you robbed her of her peace. You robbed her of like, her night out. Like she's worrying about me now. And so like he showed me that there was so much more to that selfishness than what it was just related to, like, the direct stealing, the direct lying, the direct, like that came from directly the drugs. And then it turns out that I could look back and I saw that I was living my entire life that way. I was living my entire life that way. Like, what can serve Mickey the best? What's crazy is it's obviously not serving me, but for some reason or another, I think like, oh yeah, like again, I'm winning life. I check in the tree like 130 pounds soaking wet, and I'm winning. I'm on top of the world, right? So it's, I think it's absolutely crazy how I do that. And I remember these things like with it is we talked a lot about that part of it. Trying to run my own show, and I think a big part of it was when, let's see, how was it? If they talk about the actor trying to set the stage, set the ballet, set this, set the lights, set this, and thinking if everything goes right, life's going to be great. And what do you think happens? It doesn't turn out the way he wants, right? I remember I was in a meeting, and it was a third step meeting actually, and I was sitting in it, and there was about 30 people in that meeting, and they're talking about the actor and the director and the actor in the show. And it kind of hit me at that time that there's 30 people in that room. There's 30 movies going on right now. There's my movie. There's the person next to me's movie. There's 30 movies in this one room going on right now. Like, why is mine the most important? Why is mine the end all be all? And that was a big, like, I don't know, those were one of those aha moments for me, that there's one director going over like 30 movies at one time. And the craziest thing is like, because like everything kind of stemmed for me, like, so scared to be alone, such a fear of being alone and what people thought. I try to put on this like show of what I thought you wanted, But, and this is directly from working the steps, when I realized that I could just take a step back and try to help other people in their movies. Next thing I know, I get a bigger role in everybody's movie, not even just mine. Like, so it's by taking that step back and not trying to, force everything into my way, to not be alone, allow people the space to be themselves. And next thing you know, like they want me around. It's the craziest thing. I think the steps are absolutely crazy. Again, I try to not figure it out. It's one of those things, when you turn my life over to something else, my life gets better. Right. When I admit I have no control, I actually end up having more control over certain decisions I make in my life. It's been pretty great. I don't know, how much time do I have?
You have plenty of time.
I could keep going. I mean, shit.
How did you know you were complete with step 3? We were talking about it earlier, and I want to just discuss that. Like, what is the effect of step 3? How do you know when you're completed? You've completed this decision that you're making.
I mean, are we talking about like my answer today, or like what I thought my answer would have been?
Well, no, I'm talking like kind of procedurally. So
okay.
You hit all the key points of this transition you're about to take. And what did step 3? What followed it for you? What you and your sponsor? What happened next?
So when I took my first third step with him, I remember it was actually cool. So I'm at work now at Avenues.
Yeah.
And we took my first step in one of the apartments back there. Like I said, we got on, he said the third step prayer. And then he immediately gave me like directions on how to write a fourth step. It was
that's what I always like to unpack, Nick, is like step 3 is a decision to work step 4. If we're going to take away the esoteric stuff, it's procedurally, I'm saying I'm going to work the rest of the steps.
Yeah. They said the first step to the third step is the fourth step.
There's a couple things. If people want to get their questions ready shortly, yeah. I just want to go over, because I'm just so curious, because there's a commonality with addiction. And when you were talking about it, I just loved the way you expressed when you first met alcohol and you came back to it and even explained it some more. It was a spiritual experience. And, that's not too far off from a truth. Your consciousness was changed. Correct. But why was it spiritual for you and it's not for the rest of the population? Like, it's because, if you explore it, there's a prior condition. What need did alcohol meet or cocaine or whatever the drug of choice, or having to smoke pot all day to get through the day? I need my consciousness to change. I really like the way you zeroed in. This is the problem. Alcohol does something for me I haven't been able to accomplish by myself. Like there's a background noise, a torment. And when you cleaned out, you're talking about this moment you were in treatment and you didn't even realize how unhappy you were because you've been going so fast. Your only experience in life was to be messed up. Yeah. And now that the noise has stopped, it's like what's going on? I'm not feeling well. I'm not happy. Yeah. I relate to that deeply and profoundly. And that's the crisis of step 1 and 2. You nailed, like, that's our experience of coming to terms with this.
I mean, I'll be honest, and like, this may sound terrible. It's a scary place to be, but like, if you're not willing to work a 4-step, don't do a third. Don't do a second or third, because like it puts me in such a vulnerable place.
Yes, it does.
Right. Like I don't have, like I said, I told you, like, how I am without my higher power, without my drugs and alcohol. That's where I'm at, in the middle. A higher power is able to, take away my defects. Drugs and alcohol are able to take away the defects, whichever way you want to put, or I ignore them. I don't know, but
they numb them. They make them tolerable until it stops working. But it's hard to live a life that's fulfilling. And that could relate to other people. If I have a secret that I have to use drugs and alcohol to feel normal, right? Everything's going to collapse and decay in your life. It's just the way society's set up. You can't be successful at this because there's a deeper trauma.
Yeah.
it's resentment. And when you were talking about selfishness, and the big book puts this metaphor out of an actor that needs to be his own director, who knows where the lights should go, actually even knows how the play should be written. It's way beyond the scale of and scope of an actor now. The actor just needs everyone to be an extension of his will.
Yeah.
God. It's essentially the perspective of God. Everyone's here to be controlled to
Yeah.
meet my it's madness. To see this just collapse in someone, and the futile way to find fulfillment, purpose, some kind of connection to experiencing life, I was trying to force the world to bend to this. And step 3, you took your time to do it in the sense the appendix talks about it. It's a spiritual awakening of the intellectual variety, the educational variety. William James, they tried to borrow off him a lot. That's what you did. You became friends with a guy and you met every week.
Yeah.
And before you knew it, we're all having this experience like we're waking up. And that's what it is. We're waking up like, oh my God, this is what's been going on.
That's exactly right. I know you mentioned something else too with it. I think it's just and it's so cool how you talk about like waking up and like the educational variety, the intellectual variety of it too is and I mean because it's so much it is right there and it should be done right away too, especially drugs and alcohol involved. But like man, I suggest going through it again if you're able to do it once, going through it again. I think and like I said, if anybody can get it, it's hard to actually do it. But like I think the coolest gift that sobriety and the steps have given me is the ability to allow anybody to be exactly who they are.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that third step selfishness of letting go that's given me, right? I think that's the greatest gift anybody could give anybody in this world. I give you the ability to be exactly who you are meant to be.
Yeah.
And that's only by taking that foot off the gas and pumping the brakes a little bit, taking that step back of trying to exert my will onto them.
Yeah.
And but that's been extremely cool.
It sounds like you met the first step was meeting the sponsor you met. Sounded providential in some sense that you meet this guy.
Yeah,
you get to meet him every week. You're spending time together,
right.
And the experience of reading AA's book together, and this slowly came to fruition. This idea, like you took step 2, it's good orderly direction. That's fine. If you read the book, probably it's just willingness.
Right.
But you kept going. You kept showing up every week. Yeah. I always want to convey to people as fast as possible, the steps aren't something to understand. There's something to experience. You can't. I understood them, but I wasn't getting the experience because I was afraid to trust someone else.
Yeah.
And you nailed that for me. That my spiritual awakening started. I essentially listened to I had faith in a sponsor. I was like, all right, I'll do it exactly the way you said it.
Yeah.
It was a relief.
It's incredible how that happened. I don't know how I got so, like I said, I'm incredibly lucky how that happened with it.
We all do.
I know it's insane. I mean, too, because like that man, he's and then today, like I said, he's my best friend today.
Yeah.
If I go a day without talking to him, people know. It's weird. I get all agitated and stuff because, like, I mean, but yeah, it's. I think the third step is what you were talking about earlier. Oh man, I don't know. I blinked. I should have landed that plane sooner.
I think we could look around for some questions, guys. If you have any questions for Mickey concerning the first 3 steps or anything else you'd like to talk about, please put the questions forward. We'll bring them on the screen. Let's also give a shout out to our man, Recovery Mike, who is the man behind the switch, our engineer and producer. Recovery Mike, hailing all the way from Delaware. We got 3 states involved here to make it. Russ is here. Another shout out to Russ. But your narrative of having the steps it's not foreign, and it defines us as a community of the pain we're just trudging along with. It, like almost I could relate to you waking up to your own pain. You've just been carrying it for so long. And in this crisis of rehab, why we have to get out of a rehab so quickly is because that pain is waking up. You
Right.
don't have medication, drink
Right.
whatever the drug is. That creates panic in a lot of people, especially in their first experience of treatment. Like, oh, there's something wrong. I know what's wrong. I'm in treatment. Like, I have to get out of here.
Right.
Like, I'm not drunk. They don't phrase it that way. I have the same hypnosis that you were describing. I almost hypnotize myself until step 3 gives us a little emergency break. If we
Yeah.
can take the time to consider it, you wake up to this happening to you more often. Like, I'm going to go further. And you did. You went to the 4th step.
Sorry.
Is that Gary?
Cleaning crew. Yeah, Gary came in and read some steps with me.
Mickey, I just want to ask out of curiosity, was Gary a total fiction, or were you modeling a Gary in your imagination?
I'm pretty sure there was a Gary at a meeting one time.
Yeah, and you just leveraged.
It might have been like the first name I heard in the meetings, and that's probably what I went with. Oh man, yeah, it's just I don't know. Even to talk about that stuff, like I think 2 and 3 have become like incredibly like important to me. Lately, like it all changes, like kind of goes for some reason or another. Different parts of my life kind of seem to focus on different steps. 2 and 3 have been huge for me lately for some reason or another. And a lot of that has to do with kind of believing in myself. Yeah. It's easy for me to know I have a problem. It's easy for me to sit in a room, come to treatment and be like, all right, like at least like whether I have the problem or somebody else created me a problem, at least I know there's a problem out there.
Yeah.
Right. But 2 and 3, like actually believing that I'm worth more is tough. Yeah. To sit in the treatment center and know I have a problem with drugs and alcohol, that's almost kind of easy. But to like believe that there's a better way to live out there and then make a decision to do it, that's hard. Yeah. Because like I've controlled myself so long, like to live a certain way that puts like my spirit down. Like it's counterproductive to life. And I've been putting it down for so long to all of a sudden now have to care or to believe that there's something out there or someone that can care about me. Like, I mean, I'm willing to IV drugs to kill myself on a daily basis. You think I'm going to have enough will to care about myself to all of a sudden take some steps? It's so hard, right? Because like the only way I'm going to do it is if I believe that there's something bigger out there for me. Like the problem that's there, right? Yeah. But came to believe a power greater than myself, make a decision towards that power. That stuff's real hard. And like I said, that's been applying like with my life in other areas too lately. But so I love 2 and 3 right now. I think it might have froze. Oh, that's good. I'm curious if I should keep talking. What is the hardest thing about my recovery? I hope y'all can hear. Otherwise, I don't know. What's the hardest thing about my recovery? Oh, I don't know. Crap. I wish there was a different question. I don't know. Thinking that I got it. That's it. You get to like working the steps and living life in a good way. Like you live according to like life with honesty, integrity, and okay, good. Yeah, so you live like life with like working these steps and going to meetings and honesty and integrity. And like what happens is life gets good. Life gets good real quick. And when life gets good, I immediately want to start running that show again. I don't know why that happens, but it continues to happen over and over and over again in like some small, some big ways. Hopefully most of the time I can catch it before it gets too bad, but it sometimes it doesn't, but that's what happens. It's the hardest thing is to forget what got me to it. Like the hardest thing is like remembering what got me to a good place. It's some people pray, some people do other things, but I'm big on actions, huge on actions. And so that might be the hardest thing. Your what are the 3 qualities your HP have? Oh, higher power. Oh, she knows the answer to it. So today, my God, my higher power, like I said, I like to think of my God as he has three things. And first is that he's not fair. I'm very thankful that God is not fair. Because if he was fair, I should be dead or in jail. I should be plenty other places, but not here, not sitting in this chair right now. Um, my second is that God is a gentleman, that he does not gentlemen, they do not show up to parties they are not invited to. So God does not come into my life unless I invite him, right? And that goes for even principle based things, principles. Um, if I want to invite honesty into like a relationship with another person, that honesty isn't there unless I bring it first, right? And then my third quality of my higher power God is that he is deaf, right? That he can't hear a word I say, he can only see my actions. And those are the three qualities I live by with God today. And that's through working the steps that I found that higher power right there.
Thanks, Mickey.
I'll
I
take it
keep
back.
getting kicked out of the StreamYard's bandwidth.
I
That
know.
was a
It's all
question.
right. I ran it just fine.
Oh, you got Ashley. That was a great question. Was there another question out there? I think we can. Nick, here's a good one. What was the hardest thing about your recovery? From Suzanne.
Oh, well, so I guess like well, I did talk about that a little bit about hardest thing today, but the hardest thing back then about my recovery, we'll answer it two different ways. Same question, two ways. Who? I think it was actually it would be the same answer because actually the first 3 months when I was in treatment, it was easy. It was kind of easy for me because like remember I didn't know I could leave, so that decision was gone. So like I didn't have to battle with that. And then by the time I knew I could, I knew I couldn't ask. So like those decisions weren't there to make it tough for me. It wasn't until like I got out of treatment, and then it was like okay, now here's a nice new world that like things started getting tough and like the hardest thing about my recovery, it was to continue to. Then I remember it was being honest.
Yeah.
Because like I remember I was still having a little struggle on what God was to me at that time, and so my sponsor and I, when we talked about it, we made a decision that for me, God was going to be honesty. And so he's like, if you're honest, you're inviting God into your life. If you're dishonest, you're living on your own. And he made it very simple, black or white for me because that's what I needed.
Yeah.
And so like it was really cool, and that's why I suggest AA so much, or to NA or whatever it is, like whatever thing I suggest so much because it's really easy to be honest with strangers. It's really easy to be honest in a room full of people that are agreeing with you. Like so, it's really easy for me to live according to God's will. Then get into a relationship at 3 months sober, whew, that's tough to be honest. Then it makes it real hard. So it kind of takes me right out of God's will, puts me back into mine. Because of course I'm, all these things come up about being embarrassed or like not supposed to date and things like that. Honesty was a tough one.
Yeah, and it seems like through the procedure of the steps, you don't really confront the true dishonesty. You mentioned it earlier, this obvious stuff out of desperation of an addiction. We can steal some things that can make us feel gross. This is acts of a desperate addiction. The true dishonesty, you were saying, you confront this private life we live in our heads, and now we got it on paper, and step 3 was committing to that. I want to go back and explore a little bit real quick. You were saying you're focusing on steps 2 and 3 lately. They've just been kind of just this background noise coming up in your life. Does that show itself? Do you have like a ritual, daily rituals, or an intention that in the morning or at night that is kind of just drawing you to this?
Like, so I stay sponsoring guys. And I stay doing these things because unfortunately I'm the kind of person who catches a problem after it's already kind of happened. Yeah. So when it comes up, my sponsor, we kind of sit there and we talk about it, and like we keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into the root of it to where we usually find it. And lately it's kind of seemed to surface up a lot at 2 and 3. And I read I choose to read some other books,
Yeah.
a lot of other books, and I try to read every night, and that's kind of that rewind. I have one
Exploring
small season.
spirituality, like book.
Yes,
Yeah, I think that's some of the best advice you could get. Start.
yes, yeah. I mean, we're battling like drugs and alcohol here, and I'm sorry, this is a complete opinion here.
Yeah.
I love AA to death, I do, and I'm sorry if this offends anybody, but why stick with one book? Like, if I have something that's going to kill me, I want as much help as I can get as
Yeah.
possible. And if that's going to come from AA, NA, spiritual book, a book based on like self esteem, whatever it is, like, man, take it and go with it. Don't, compartmentalize myself to just one thing. That's explore.
Yeah, I think that's it's great advice, and I've heard opposite advice at meetings, and I can understand why. There's
Yeah.
fundamentalists, big book Nazis, their approach. I have a total appreciation for it, but I'm also a guy, and so are you. I have a deep intellectual curiosity. I also had flaming resentments against religion, and they started to slowly get extinguished around step 3. I'm getting humble. Like my life's a wreck. I'm going to hold on to these resentments. Maybe there's things I haven't considered. And how am I going to find these things out? Like, how am I just going to? I could watch so many YouTubes before you're
Yeah.
dismayed. There's a commonality, I think, in recovery I relate to reading and being able to read a page. And if I can't read that page, be it ADHD, turmoil, it tells me the state of my mind.
Yeah.
And then it also lets me explore things to make life not only novel again, I just survived an addiction, but curious. Don't I want? There's got to be more than what I was doing. I want to find out what is it out there. What's the commonality of all our stories? And you were speaking to that tonight.
Yeah. And I think that's like that mindset, how you put like I want more out of life. That's where that 2 and 3s kind of come in
Yeah.
to it. Is like, I got sober, I got a sober job, and kind of things started settling out. Well, then it's like, why can't there be more?
Sure.
Like, why am I setting that bar so low for myself
No.
there?
Yeah.
Like, and it started with sobriety, and then another job, and then relationships, family, every area of my life. Like, what am I doing to myself to just set that bar low there? Like, why am I only calling my
Yeah.
mom once a week? I can be a better son and call twice, right? Like,
Yeah. You're waking up.
so that's it, right?
Wake up. Like, and it's the new Mickey. It's the Mickey just buried somewhere, like a Joe or Mickey. That version of us got shut off. It's waking back up in this spiritual awakening through the steps, a discipline. I like when you described, because it's kind of a third step. It's like an ideal effect of the third step you got to experience. You're sitting at a meeting, and I'm not just the only movie in there. Everyone used to be extras in Mickey's movie, and I could relate to this. That's the death of an ego, being the filter of life. Like, I've been detached. Maybe why I'm not connected to people is because I haven't been listening to them. I can't. Maybe I haven't been asking them to do something for them. You were sharing it earlier about this idea of selfishness. It's something peels off my eyes. I'm like, where have I been?
Right.
Where have I been? Like,
I don't know.
I related to the way you described that. That my movie is everybody's movie. Maybe I should get involved and play my part and be a better person, be a better friend, a better brother.
Yeah. And that's just it's crazy because like I just want a bigger role in the movie at the end of the day, which is why I'm doing all this stuff. But if, like you said, if like how I just realized it's one movie instead of mine,
Yeah.
30 different, like I end up getting that bigger role because my family wants me more in their life. Like relationships seem to work out a little better, friendships seem to work out a little better. Friends start inviting me back to things again. And so it's really cool. And I think some of the hardest part of that, whether that's that second or third step that kind of comes into it, is it, like you said, the idea of just like kind of letting go, surrendering. Like I'm sitting here, like it's something that I feel like I believe to my core that has to be experienced. I can tell you all about it. I can sit here and I can tell you, like, look, you have 3 Red Bulls. Like, if you give away 1, I'll give you 2. So it's like I have 3, give away 1. Next thing I know, I have 4.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I can tell you that mathematically, though, it doesn't make sense. right? Like, how do I have 3, give 1 away? Now I have 4. Like, mathematically, it doesn't line up. But like the experience of living like that, when you feel it, you understand it, and I'm willing to do anything to keep it, right? But the willing to do anything is actually going along like spiritual principles, good lines today, which is crazy because it's the exact opposite of what it would have been like,
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Yeah, and it's not like a head full of acid or drinking. You're having this is a spiritual experience you're describing because it's changing your consciousness. It's changing your perspective. In the big book, the first description of a spiritual awakening is Carl Jung's version when they refer to him.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's a revolution, essentially. It's a monumental change in ideas, perspectives, emotions guiding these men are now cast aside.
Yeah.
You're describing that over a couple months because you found a good guide.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you could relate to this, Mickey, but sometimes it doesn't even feel like will. It feels like you kept showing up, and I feel this way about myself. I kept showing up to meet him out of desperation. I thought I knew what the steps were. I had a really good idea of them. I kind of let something happen to me. It wasn't like I could steer it at that point. Around step 3, I was just giving up. It's not like you're willing something, you're letting something go.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I think this guy, there's just something about him with me, and I can look back and I can tell you exactly yes is the answer to that, but at the time I didn't know that's what it was. Because like this guy, I mean, I'll tell you a quick little funny story. Like this dude, I remember it was like I was still in treatment. I had to get a job, and my family was so happy that I was in treatment. They were like, "Well, look, we'll get your car to take an oil change and stuff." So I didn't have my car for a day, and I had to go apply for sober jobs like that. So I'm like, "All right, well, she's got to run errands." I'm like, "I'm gonna go." I called him up because I thought this was such a great idea. It's like I called him up. I was like, "Dude, my mom's got to run errands. Wherever she goes in, I'm just gonna run in and get an application." And he goes, "Dude, stop making your mom stop relying on her so much that she's got to bend her will to you." I'm like, "Wait, what?" I was like, I'm gonna do good things today. He's like, "What if something happens? Like if the manager wants to talk to you, you want to make your mom wait for you? Like you just put her through all this hell.
Wow.
And then you're gonna make her wait in the car while you're gonna try to get another job." He's like, "You got 2 feet, you can walk." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I walked. I didn't know I could say no. Is the thing. It was like, so it kind of worked out extremely well. It was like with it and like
nice match.
Yeah, so it's like but we talk about it all the time, and he's like, what's funny too is like he's like, when I first told him that story again, he was like, "Dude, I don't even remember telling you that."
Yeah,
which tells me like that's where like the higher power speaks through to somebody, because like
it's intuition.
I remember what I told you. Like I'm gonna remember what saved your life. If it was me, like I'm gonna remember how I said it, what I said.
Yeah,
but like the fact that he didn't remember it tells me like it's probably the higher power that kind of spoke through him then.
Yeah.
And gave me exactly what I needed to hear for that day, because for some reason, he's like, "But dude," he's like, you didn't have to walk. You know that, right? I'm like, I for something about it, if somebody else would have told me like you need to walk, I'd have told him like, you need to get out. But like for some reason, when he told me, I was like, okay.
Well, I think people find that, when they're lucky and they go to enough meetings, this pleasant surprise, you connect it with someone that had intuition with you and you had it with him, and he can challenge you that day.
Yeah.
Maybe he knew it wasn't going to set you in a tailspin, and you might not even considered it. You were already thinking, I'm doing great things.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say he told me something really early on that helped me out. It was like one of my first week or two in treatment. And he told me, if you're willing to do anything, you're never going to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And he said, if you're willing to hear anything, you will never hear something you don't want to hear. And he told me that. And it's like, that changed everything for me.
That's interesting. I've never heard it put that way.
And so that's what I think, like he told me that and I really believed him. And I think that's why it made it so easy for me to walk.
That's really Zen. That's like a Buddhist Eastern, not enjoy pain, but experience them. And they're both experiences. If you're willing to hear anything, that's a really unique statement. We could have talked about that for an hour.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah. I know.
I'm going to keep that, Mickey. That was it for me. I mean, I'm going to be chewing on that for a while. Yeah. I want to.
Good.
That
was the big motto, like the early sobriety for me. That changed it. I love it.
That's a great approach, and it lends itself to experience life. Like without having emotional responses that are the reality of my life, because my emotions were a train wreck. I'm so impulsive, anything. To start to see that kind of quality to life's experience lifts me above the impulse of addiction, and addiction being, even when I'm not using drugs, this impulse to emotion, something's happening to me, my
Yeah.
sensitivity. That's a really great mantra to have that you just said.
It is. And another one that I heard like somewhat recently, and I absolutely love it. And like this one's been in my brain for a minute. Because like the thing was, I know I came to treatment and like I love my family. I
Hmm.
love my family. And then somebody would say, "Would you die for your family?" I'd probably say yes. But the question that made it hard is like, but it's like, would you live for them? Right?
Yeah.
I'm willing to die for them, but am I willing to live for them? Am
Yeah.
I willing to do things every day to make myself healthier? To do these things to stay out of an addiction, right? All these things every day. I only have to die once, but I have to live every day of my
We
life.
got to play
So
the
it's
long
like,
game.
and so yeah, it's like, man, I wasn't like, I loved my family enough to die for them, but I didn't love them enough to live for them at the time.
Yeah.
And like that was something that it was a hard truth to kind of realize with it. But like it all came through just like the willingness of just willing to let go of that something that I'm trying to hold on to right there.
Yeah.
But and understand that there is a better way. And like let me, like I said, make a decision to take steps and actions towards that better way.
Yeah.
Right. Hmm.
Mickey, that was thank you for this discussion. And that was
Well, thank you.
almost like a ballet. How you danced through the first, second, and third steps of your experience. And I want to thank you for doing
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate you having me on here.
I want to also thank everyone that showed up tonight and asked questions. Shout out to Recovery Mike from Delaware, helped facilitate, produce, and engineer this for us tonight. Thanks, Mike. Anyone else? Another plug for Hammock Readings. Guys, check it out. Share them. If you have any suggestions of things you'd like to hear in Hammock Readings, we'll be shooting season 4 next month for the spring version. Please send them to us on Facebook. We'll respond. Any questions for Mickey or deeper or further explanations on the steps? If you can't reach out to your outreach coordinator, feel free to email me, joe.vanwee@avenuesrecovery.com. It takes about a week, but any materials you need or support, I'll send it to you. Another round of silent applause. You could do applause.
I know, that's so cool. Y'all are great.
For step 4, stop by next week. We're going to talk about step 4, variations of how you can write it from Narcotics Anonymous, AA. There's an inventory in Dharma and refuge recovery. But at some point, are we going to measure and confront our life so we can know the reality of it and cut away the fiction and start something new? We'll talk about that next week. Mickey, thanks again. And thanks for everyone coming out tonight. And that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon, Mick.
All right. Appreciate it. So log out.